using cable tools?
We used cable tools up until 1900.
When did rotary tools first come into the Corsicana field?
Well, as my recollection, they came, Mr. Boughton, better. Well, I recall at about the time that my brother Jim and I landed in Corsicana to work as cable tools driller and tool dresser, Mr. George A. Bowden moved a rotary drilling equipment from a water well project at Alvarado, Texas to Corsicana and drilled a well to the top of the oil sand for Mr. Rod Oliver, a banker from Groesbeck, Texas. This well was completed through the producing sand with cable tools. But on the second well Mr. Bowden drilled with his rotary, it was fully completed by the rotary, or hydraulics method, as was frequently called in those days. In view of this fact, I feel Mr. Bowden due all credit for the introduction of the rotary drilling in a practical way of oil wells in 1897 at Corsicana, Texas.
Would you tell me some more about Mr. Bowden while you're talking about him?
Well, Mr. Bowden, we called him in those days Old Man Bowden. He was an elderly gentleman. And, of course, I didn't know him too well, but he was the, he was the father-in-law of Walter Sharp. And by the way, Mr. W.B. Sharp now lives in Houston, Texas.
How long did you continue drilling at Corsicana then?
We drilled there from up until the fall of 1900. And Brother Jim stayed on until Beaumont Excitement came in. He stayed there and looked after the remaining tools we had there while I and my brother Kurt went to Beaumont in the fall of 1900.
That was for Lucas Gusher.
Yeah, that was, turned out to be the Lucas Gusher.
Yes. Will you tell me how you got the contract for that well?
As I remember, I think it was probably in August, we received a short letter from Mr. John Gailey of Pittsburgh stating that they would have their man A.F. Lucas call on us in the near future with the idea of getting our price and see if we would move tools to a location near Beaumont, Texas, and drill a well for them. And that any trade we made with Mr. Lucas would be financed by Guffey and Gailey. Now that was about all that this letter said. It was very short. So we didn't hear anything more from until Mr. Lucas showed up. Well, Mr. Lucas showed up on a Sunday there, and Jim was away someplace, so he called, and I took the old buckboard and the horse that we used to hustle around our tools and went down to the hotel and picked up Captain Lucas and took him around, showed him the oil field. So the next day, why, he and Jim got together. Jim was our business manager, of course. He and Jim got together and they discussed the plan or the idea of moving the rotary down to Beaumont. So after much discussion, they decided that one of us should go down and look the situation over. Well, in a short time afterwards, why, Jim went down and met Mr. Lucas there and went over the situation and agreed on a price of $2 a foot for a 1,200-foot test. Guffey and Gailey to furnish all pipe. We used to furnish everything else, derrick and drilling equipment and fuel and so on. So in October, early in October, we loaded our rotary on at Corsicana, and I went down and met with Captain Lucas, and he met me at the train, rather. We went to the lumber yard, the Beaumont Lumber Company, and we bought the bill of lumber for the derrick And then after that was attended to, well, then we had to see about fuel. So they told us at the lumber company that we'd have to hunt up a young fellow named Bain Price who had the rights to handle the slabs there for fuel over the town. You see, cut them up, and so we drove around, and of course, Captain had lived there a good while, and he knew this young Bain Price. So we found him, and we made a trade for slabs to be used for fuel out on the well. So that attended to. Why, Captain told me that he had difficulty. The carload of pipe was in there, but he couldn't get it unloaded. So I suggested we go out and see about it, and we did. And we went out there in the afternoon, and I come up on the darned car and unloaded the car a load of pipe, which Captain surprised the captain very much. He couldn't think that they'd been led to believe it'd have to have a hoist or something to do it. But we got it unloaded, and Cap, he was quite busy rolling it out of the way. He says, I'd roll it off the car. What's been a mystery to me since, how I ever got the joint of 10-inch out of the darn car. But I got the 8-inch and the 6-inch and the 4-inch, of course. But I often wondered myself how I got that joint of 10-inch out, pretty heavy. So that's how we got the pipe unloaded.
He pitched right in and worked, too.
Oh, yeah, he rolled it off, you see. As I rolled it down, I used 4-inch pipe for skids, and I'd roll it up. You see, the standards came in on the car, you see. And I used those for skids and rolled it back and then rolled it up on the skids and out over the side of the car and roll down, and he'd roll it out of the way, keep it out of the way.
Well, where did you go from there?
Well, we went back to town, and I got me a room at the hotel, went back to town, and wired Jim to send the other boys down. So they were all ready, of course, and I think possibly